Hey guys, Davey's showing you another project I'm working on, and this video is for Dunn, who owns this really nice little Micromoog. So I'm going to go over before you're done, sure everything's functioning, just give you a good overview of it. But this unit here was interesting in particular because Dunn had actually bought one sight unseen, and he had it brought to me for restoration, and when I got it, it was pretty bad. It had been serviced, in quotations, by somebody that clearly didn't have a soldering iron or desoldering tools or any knowledge really of electronics. They had bypassed some of the capacitors with wire for the coupling capacitors, and they had burnt tracings off the board and just all kinds of stuff. And I'd managed to get it working pretty well, but the problem I had with it was that it had an intermittent problem. And basically what happened, we got into the budget. When you start troubleshooting, you know, time is money, and we're getting into the cost of what it would have just been. It would have been cheaper just to buy another Micromoog, is basically what it comes down to. Very rare I run into situations like this, but that's why it's very important you choose who does your work on your instruments, because it can cause problems, especially if they don't know what they're doing. So what we ended up doing is I had a unit, personal unit, that I've had probably for about 6 years. I've used it quite a bit. And basically I took my unit and his unit and kind of mashed them together, because my unit had defects, which is why it was my personal unit. Most of my units don't look that great because I'm not the mechanic that drives the old beat up cars. You know, you never drive the good stuff or use the good stuff. It's always everybody else's gets restorations. So what I ended up doing was taking the chassis of his, because it was in better shape, and I used his chassis. And I'd also already cut a new wooden plywood bottom for his other unit, and so we used it on this one. Basically Moog used particle board on these. That's the only drawback to these particular units, was they used this particle board, kind of what you found on the bottom of mini Moog chassis. And the problem is with these though, there's nothing really supportive. They're actually supporting the keyboard and everything, where on a mini Moog it's just a plate to cover up stuff, but these are actually supportive. So I cut a new piece of plywood, painted it, put new rubber feet on it, and just got it fixed up really nice, so it's a good solid unit. If I walk you around back here, I'm going to show you how nice this thing looks here. Did the base mod on this one, selectable base mod, so you can select if you want base mod on or off. And basically all the base mod does give you a little bit more low end, and but when you change the capacitors like I do, you find that the new caps actually help with the bass anyways, because what happens a lot of times, that cap will dry out, the coupling capacitor you're actually connecting to dries out, and that's why it sounds like crap anyways. So when you replace the caps, it already sounds better, but this just gives you a little bit more low end. But what this also tends to do, if you leave it in circuit, I've found over the years it makes it more muddy in the upper octaves. So if you go into a lead sound, it doesn't sound as good with the bass mod engaged. So you turn the bass mod off, now you're back in the factory coupling capacitor, and it sounds much better. And that's just what I found over the years. But your serial number here, this is the serial number that was mine, that's now yours. It's 3970, and so that's your new serial number. It was built in October of 1976, I believe that's right. And just a really cool unit. Now what's interesting is the unit that he had bought was actually 3880, so they're really, really close in series. In fact, they both have revision E circuit boards. So the circuit boards were the same revision, power supplies the same revision, everything was pretty much the same revision. So it made it a lot easier switching over between chassis parts, because they did change the chassis as well. As time went on, they changed the badging. This has a little small badge. They later went to a plastic badge that's a bigger Moog font, and so you know, everything kind of matched with what he had, which was fantastic. It couldn't have worked out any better. Rebuilt the ribbon controller, went through it, cleaned it up really good. You can see how nice that looks now, and it's just a really great playing instrument. So let me put the camera on the tripod. I'll go through this thing, let you hear how this thing works. It's just a really great little unit now. I think I'll be a lot happier with it than what we had. Because that unit you had, although I had it working fairly well, as soon as I put it back together, it would do intermittent stuff, and I spent hours trying to figure out what that was. and with all the tracings being damaged from the last technician, it makes it really challenging sometimes to trace down stuff. Also, the pots have been flushed with oil, and the board still had oil all over it, so it was a contamination problem as well, which I had washed the board, baked it out, and so I had all that cleaned up, but that board was just taking way too much time, and so that's when we really ended up making the decision to do this. But anyways, like I say, you're going to be much happier with this unit. The combination of your old unit and this unit is just a much better playing instrument. But anyway, I'll just start by letting you hear this thing. Open that filter up. So what's neat about these synths, for those that don't know much about the Micromoog, is that they're actually one oscillator synthesizer. But it's a very, very cool oscillator. It's a discrete oscillator design. It's not using Curtis chips, none of that stuff. It's its own design by Jim Scott. So shout out to Jim Scott who designed this instrument. And it just has a tone. It has a really good fat tone for one oscillator. And they actually give you a divider circuit that's clocked off the oscillator. So you get it's a divide by 2 and divide by 4. And so you can actually get a sub-octave, a 1 octave below or 2 octaves below, which comes in handy when you do certain parameters of programming on these synthesizers. But we'll start with the oscillators. You've already heard them a little bit. We'll go through all the keys, show you all the keys working. Your octave range works. The octave is really great. Of course, the full calibration as well, including the thermal calibration for the heater of the exponential current converter. So I do that as well. Waveforms. This is actually a variable waveform. You're kind of hearing like a sawtooth right now. Square wave right there. Then you got your doubling, which is what I was talking about, the divider. So we can go down 1 octave. What also makes this synth really cool is how you can mix that the sub-oscillator. This would also be called a sub-oscillator in most synth designs. Is you can actually mix it. So some synths either it's on or off, and you can't really mix it between the sound, the tone of the actual oscillator. So you just can't mix it. This one here you can actually mix, and you hear I can just mix it just a little bit, and it gives it that little bit of extra tone. Or we can go down an octave. Down 2 octaves. So that's a really handy feature. What I also like about the modulation section, I'll jump over here to modulation real quick, is you can actually make it sweep through the waveforms of the oscillator. Now this isn't quite pulse width modulation, but you get a similar effect. It's really cool. So we'll bring up the modulation here in the waveform. See how great that sounds. Now we got the bass mod off right now. I'll turn the bass mod on. I don't know if you'll be able to tell a big difference in the camera or not. It gives it just a little bit more low end is really what it does. It's not really an octave thing. It's more of just a frequency response in the coupling circuitry. It's really what it is. So that's your oscillators. We'll turn the oscillators off real quick. I'll show you the noise works. So there's your noise source. Turn the oscillators back on. Show you the filter works. We'll go in and turn the oscillators back off. We'll set the filter in tone mode. It's just your filter. And same thing here, we can modulate just the filter and you can hear it just as like a frequency source, oscillator source actually, in this case of the filter self-oscillating. Put a little glide on that. Now a band that actually used the Micromoog quite often, and it gets neglected a lot of times, is Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk actually used a Micromoog quite often. And the reason is it gets really crazy. You can actually put the filter into basically L-film by using a switch called filter mod by oscillator. So you're actually engaging the oscillator's frequency into the filter to modulate it. So you can see it gets really crazy. Of course, when we actually add the oscillators back into that, we've changed the whole architecture of the sound. And right now we're just modulating just the filter, so you're still hearing that filter modulation. Really cool sound. Now we're still in tone mode, and this is also something really cool. You actually set the self-oscillation of the filter in this particular design. It's still the Moog transistor ladder filter, but they gave you a little bit different options. So we go to full, and then you can hear more of that oscillator versus put a little filter contour on that. Back to normal in the filter. Go back to off in the filter mod by oscillator. the base mod on right now. This is just the raw synth how it would have been from factory with new coupling capacitors. We'll turn on the base mod, and it shakes the room even harder. You have contour options. You can actually make it where you can hear it will release even when I hold in a note. It's going to follow the release setting. If I go here, it'll actually hold till off a note. We got the attack. We go back to the follow out. We got the amount of contour as well, which this is really cool. It'll either go non-inverted or inverted, so you can actually get a something like that, or see how that works. You've also got your loudness control as well. You've already heard your filter pretty much to this setting here. You got the same settings for your loudness control as well. We'll go to open that filter all the way back up so it's not in the way. We'll turn off that modulation in the oscillator. So now we're pretty much back into just the filter. We'll go here and actually turn the switch here, set the decay and, or the attack and release here on the loudness control to 0. Okay, just a click. Same thing here. We got the switch. It's just it'll release even though I'm holding a note. We'll go here. Same thing here. So allow me to actually not have a release till off a note. So that's your release time. Here you go all the way out, and then we got your attack. As you can hear. So that's your loudness control. Set it back up here. So I'll set it like that, and then we'll actually go here. I'll show you that the modulation sections work. So you've already heard the modulation of your waveform. We'll go here and modulate just the oscillator frequency. Now just a hair. There's your ribbon working. So you got a triangular waveform. You've also got a square wave. You can also do bend. You've also got noise, and this is kind of like on a mini Moog when you use the modulation mix control, and you can actually engage noise into the modulation bus. Same thing here. We've got sample and hold with auto trigger, meaning it's going to trigger off the rate of the LFO, so you can hear the sample and hold circuit. Then we got sample and hold without auto trigger. So this is just if you want to set it up and have sample and hold on the wheel. Something like that. You can engage, close this filter up. So here it is in the filter. See how that works. So that's your sample and hold. You got off, and then of course then you got your sweep to the waveform again of your oscillator. You've got oscillator and filter, which will do both filter and oscillator modulation. Off, oscillator only, filter. Now just actually sweep into the waveform. And a few other switches you got here too. I'll go over some of these switches here. So you got release. This is kind of like the decay switch on a mini Moog. You can hit it. You just have note off. Here, modulate the oscillator. So once again. Then you got your oscillator, which is normal, which is actually what's going to track the keyboard. You got drone, which is going to be just an elf note reference. You can still your filter track the keyboard, which is really cool. Something else about this filter I forgot to bring up, I always bring this up when I do these Micromoogs, is that the filter is completely different in the fact that it uses the octave switched footage of the oscillator to also set the footage of the filter, which is really cool. So this filter actually does kind of work like an oscillator. So if we go back to tone mode on the filter, we'll turn the oscillator off, set the frequency low. If we turn the octave switch, that's your filter. The oscillators are off right now. Set the frequency. I just tuned the filter, and so the filter is actually working as a tone source. What's also cool, we can put the oscillator in drone mode. You can hear the filter. If we go to filter mod by oscillator, you get some really cool effects out of this thing. You can almost get like a ring modulation effect. You've also got a wide range frequency control of the oscillator, which is really cool for certain things. You can really slow with it as well. See how that works? Then we put the doubling on there. You get all kind of variations of sound here, but and that's just a little bit of goof around with it. But you can program it, get those things like you want them, and get all kind of sound effects as well in this unit. But anyways, done. I just want to take a minute here and go over this unit for you to show you that everything's functioning. For everybody that's watching, feel free. I appreciate you guys watching. So I'm a little slow today. It's Monday. But I appreciate you guys watching as always, and there'll be more to come here very soon. Take care.